More than a year after the shocking raids on his mansion, Diddy is finally headed to prison. But here's the thing. This story isn't just about one man's downfall. It's about decades of whispers, mansion parties that no one dared to talk about, and celebrities who tried to warn us, long before anyone believed them. For years, the industry painted Diddy as untouchable, a mogul, a trendsetter, a man who built empires. But behind the glitz and the flashing lights, stories were leaking. Stories of abuse. Stories of coercion. Stories of people being silenced, blackballed, and destroyed if they ever dared to say no. And now, it's all coming to light. Not only has Diddy fallen, but word on the street is he's only the first domino. Another giant in Hollywood is allegedly about to fall. And when that name drops, it's going to shake the industry harder than even Diddy's fall. So today, we're pulling back the curtain on everything. The warnings, the victims, the cover-ups, and the names that might be next. But first, let's go back to the man who was never afraid to say what others whispered in the shadows, Katt Williams. Out of all the people who crossed paths with Diddy, there was one who refused to play the game. One who stood on stage, sat in interviews, and straight up told the truth, even when it cost him his career. That man was Katt Williams. P.S. See, Katt wasn't just a comedian. He was an insider, someone who mingled in the same circles, got invited to the same parties, and saw what most of us could never imagine. But unlike the rest, Katt didn't stay quiet. He told us about the mansion parties. He told us about the private rooms where industry secrets unfolded. He told us about the receipts he collected, the stories whispered into his ear, and the powerful people who hated him because he dared to speak. Katt once said, "For 30 years I've done nothing but collect information, knowledge, and your secrets. If you were in a corner doing something you weren't supposed to be doing, don't blame me. Somebody told me. I gathered that. I valued that. I paid for that. I know so many things I shouldn't know, and they all know it. And Hollywood did know it. Which is why Katt Williams was branded
caring,
as
loving,
crazy,
generous, passionate,
difficult,
and dedicated
a problem.
man. Christian
But now,
Combs wrote more.
In 2025, those same stories are lining up perfectly with what's being revealed in court. Katt wasn't crazy. He was telling the truth. And the truth is catching up. If Katt Williams was the prophet screaming in the wilderness, then Aubrey was the whistleblower who lived it, day after day, under Diddy's control. For those of you who don't remember, Aubrey shot to fame on Making the Band, Diddy's MTV reality show that promised to turn ordinary kids into global superstars. And for a while, it looked like a dream come true. Aubrey became the breakout face of Danity Kane, the girl group Diddy built from scratch. But what the cameras didn't show, the contracts, the manipulation, the rules, was darker than anyone expected. Aubrey later revealed that being under Diddy's thumb wasn't about music. It wasn't about artistry. It was about control. She's described the environment as toxic, where every move you made, every word you spoke, every outfit you wore had to go through him. And if you didn't play by his rules, you were finished. Aubrey even said, "We were controlled in every aspect of our lives. We were told what we could wear, who we could talk to, where we could go. It wasn't a career. It was a prison with spotlights." And she wasn't exaggerating. Diddy had a history of dangling fame like bait, then snatching it away when people didn't comply. Aubrey claims that when she started speaking up, When she started questioning his methods, suddenly she was labeled difficult. Sound familiar? That's the same playbook used on Cat Williams. Think about it. Danity Kane was one of the only girl groups in history to debut 2 consecutive albums at #1 on Billboard. They were breaking records. They were unstoppable. And then, out of nowhere, they were gone. Disbanded. Silenced. Why? Because Aubrey O'Day stood up to Diddy. She said in multiple interviews that she saw the manipulation firsthand, and when she started pushing back, she became a target. One day you're the star of the show, the next day you're out. Aubrey later revealed, Diddy didn't just end Danity Kane. He ended careers, reputations, and the confidence of young women who trusted him. And the scariest part? Aubrey hinted at things she still can't say publicly. Stories of those infamous parties. Things that would blow the lid off the industry if she ever dropped the full truth. But here's where it gets chilling. Aubrey's warnings, like Cat Williams, were ignored for years. She was painted as bitter, as someone who just couldn't let go of the past. But now that Diddy has fallen, suddenly Aubrey's words sound less like bitterness and more like testimony. And she's not the only one. Because just when Aubrey's voice was being silenced, another story was unfolding. A story that involved a teenage boy. A boy who Diddy personally invited into his world. A boy named Usher. If Aubrey O'Day showed us how Diddy controlled careers, then Usher's story shows us how Diddy controlled people long before they even understood what they were stepping into. Let's rewind. Before Usher Raymond became the global superstar we know today, before the platinum records and the Vegas residencies, he was just a young boy chasing a dream. And Diddy, already a rising kingpin in the industry, decided to mentor him. But this mentorship wasn't your typical artist development program. No. Diddy himself once bragged about it. He called it Flavor Camp. Picture this. A 13-year-old Usher being flown into New York City. He's barely a teenager, still trying to figure out who he is. And suddenly, he's living in Puffy's house. Not a music school. Not a structured training academy. Puffy's house. Usher himself has told these stories. In interviews, he laughed nervously, calling it wild. He said he saw things that no kid should ever see. Parties that were anything but PG. Nights where celebrities, alcohol, and things we don't even want to name were all around him. Usher admitted, I had a chance to live with Puffy at the age of 13, which is crazy. There was a lot of wild parties, and I was there. Read that again. 13 years old. While other kids were learning algebra, Usher was in Diddy's world, watching grown men and women do grown things in real time. And here's the disturbing part. Diddy didn't hide it. He bragged about it, on camera. He said Usher was learning the flavor of life. That's not mentorship. That's exposure. That's grooming. Years later, people look back at those clips, and they don't see funny anymore. They see red flags waving all over the place. And if you think Usher was the only one, think again. Diddy's so-called mentorship program became a pipeline, a way to bring young, talented, vulnerable kids straight into his orbit, where the rules of Hollywood applied, and childhood ended the second you walked through those doors. And the creepiest part? Usher isn't the only big name who went through this. Another boy, much younger, was also brought into Puffy's world. A boy who would later become one of the most famous pop stars in the world, Justin Bieber. By the time Usher had survived his Flavor Camp years, he had already seen things most adults wouldn't believe. But his story didn't end there, because years later, Usher would unknowingly pass the baton. And the next name in this pipeline, Justin Bieber. Think back to 2008. Bieber was just a kid from Canada, uploading covers on YouTube. Innocent, fresh-faced, singing for fun. Then one day, his videos caught the attention of Usher, who became his mentor. But behind Usher was always Diddy, watching, circling, waiting. There's an old clip that fans can't stop bringing up. A young Justin, still a teenager, hanging around Diddy's mansion. Puffy looks into the camera and says, "I'm gonna be hanging with Justin for the next 48 hours. He's having a 48-hour Puffy party." Pause. Think about that. A teenage Justin Bieber, locked into a 2-day party with a grown man who already had a reputation for wildness, secrets, and mansion gatherings that most people still whisper about today. And it doesn't stop there. There's another clip. This one even creepier. Diddy looks at Bieber and says, "Where you been, man? You're supposed to spend more time with me. You haven't been calling me." Justin laughs nervously. But the energy? It's uncomfortable. Fans back then thought it was weird. Fans today are calling it what it looks like: grooming behavior. Here's the bigger picture. Justin Bieber was brought in by Usher, the same kid who grew up under Puffy's roof. It's like a cycle, a chain. One boy grows up in the chaos, then helps lead the next boy straight into the lion's den. And what happened to Bieber after those early years? He spiraled. The fame, the scandals, the breakdowns. By his own words, Justin has admitted he was exposed to too much, too young. He's talked about being taken advantage of in the industry. He's talked about people using him. And when you connect those dots, when you realize who was in the room in those early years, it's hard not to wonder, how deep did Diddy's influence really go? How many mentorships were actually just recruitment into something darker? But the story doesn't stop with Bieber, because just when the world thought it couldn't get any darker, another voice came forward, a voice known for blowing the lid off industry secrets. Jaguar Wright. By the time Justin Bieber's clips resurfaced and fans started connecting the dots, the whispers were no longer whispers, they were patterns. And then came Jaguar Wright. For those who don't know, Jaguar has built a reputation as the woman who refuses to stay silent about Hollywood's dirtiest secrets. She's called out legends, she's exposed scandals, and yes, she's put Diddy and Usher directly in her crosshairs. Jaguar didn't mince words. She accused Usher of playing both sides, of knowing what was going on behind the scenes, but choosing silence when speaking up could have changed everything. She called him out as someone who was molded by Diddy's world, shaped by those early years in Puffy's house, and then kept the cycle going. She also warned the public about Diddy's so-called mentorship programs, saying that young artists weren't just being taught how to sing or dance, they were being taught how to comply, to obey, to fit into a system that was designed to protect the powerful and silence the vulnerable. Jaguar's interviews painted a chilling picture. A picture where Usher wasn't just a victim, but also a gatekeeper. A picture where Justin Bieber wasn't just a rising star, but another pawn in the same twisted game. And the crazy part, when Jaguar first started saying these things, people laughed. They dismissed her as bitter or unstable. But isn't that what they said about Cat Williams? Isn't that what they said about Aubrey O'Day? One by one, the voices that were dismissed as crazy are now lining up with court documents, testimonies, and the crumbling empire of Sean Diddy Combs. And if Jaguar is right, if even half of what she's claiming is true, then Diddy's fall is just the beginning. Because when one domino falls, the rest don't stand for long. So here we are. From Cat Williams shouting into the void, to Aubrey O'Day fighting to be heard, to Usher's flavor camp years and Justin Bieber's uneasy mentorship. And finally, Jaguar Wright pulling the curtain all the way back. Piece by piece, the puzzle forms. It's not just one story. It's a pattern, a cycle of silence, power, and control that's only now beginning to collapse. Diddy's empire may be crumbling, but if the whispers are true, his fall is just the first domino, and the next name to fall might be even bigger. But here's the question I'll leave with you. Do you think these stories prove that Hollywood protects its own until the very last moment? Or do you think the truth was always too big to stay buried? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because trust me, this conversation is just getting started. And if you've made it this far, you're part of the Among Legends family. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and stay tuned, because the story isn't over. Not by